Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Scott Mantz. What did you think of Breathe? You know, I love doing these Q&As, but I really love doing them with filmmakers that I really champion and really love. And please give it up for the busiest and the nicest person in Hollywood, the director of Breathe, Andy Serkis. Well, you know, the first question is usually sort of a cliche, so I'm just going to bypass the how did this project come about, and I'm going to ask you, tell me about your relationship with Jonathan Cavendish and how it led to this.
So Jonathan Cavendish, obviously, whose parents, Robin and Diana, are, is my very, very close friend and business partner, and we set up a company together called the Imaginarium Studios, which is a performance capture studio, so the technology that I'm sort of associated with and want to further the art and craft of, linked to a production house, a production entity. So we make films, and we also have this physical studio where we build digital characters for films, video games, virtual reality, augmented reality, all sorts of things. And so when we were setting up this company, which was in 2011, we had all sorts of projects that we were setting up for me to direct, one of which was Animal Farm, one of which was Jungle Book, which we're still working on. And then one of the projects that Jonathan brought was this story about his parents called Breathe. And I read the script one night, and I was so blown away by it. It was the emotional content of the film, of the script, and it's just as on paper. It was so powerful, and what I loved about it was it wasn't. It had humor. It was humor, and yet it was about something, about this terrible tragedy that befell this couple, and yet the way that their response to it was through this exuberance, this lust for life, this pioneering couple who were breaking and smashing the prejudices and sort of attitudes towards disability in the 1960s. I just found it so moving. So we started to work on it, and then as I was telling you earlier, Jungle Book sort of started to come together. So we went out and we shot this whole movie of Jungle Book with Cate Blanchett and Benedict Cumberbatch and with Christian Bale, and we went out to South Africa. We were on location, and then during the post-production period, because we were using performance capture technology to make Jungle Book, there was this kind of hiatus period, and so we very, very quickly had the opportunity to work with the amazing Andrew Garfield and Claire Foy, and we raised the money for this film in 7 weeks. Which is pretty unheard of for a production like this, and we shot it in 7 weeks, and so we really had to just put our foot to the floor and just grab this little window of opportunity, and that's how it came about.
So basically, you did all the actual principal photography for Jungle Book,
Yeah,
and because there was so much post to work on,
yeah,
you kind of had a little bit of a break.
yeah, exactly.
So what do you do?
So what do? You shoot another movie?
Let's make another movie.
Yeah, come on.
Now, in getting, well, I guess in working on something that's more straightforward, live action, seeing the results right away,
Yeah.
versus okay, you're gonna shoot with the performance capture and you work on the post, so you don't see the results for quite some time.
Absolutely.
What was it like to just go watch a daily of something you just shot and there it is?
It's amazing. I mean, to work with these actors and to have these performances in the can every day, it was just a marvel. Kind of, truly being able to see. To see that was an alien concept to me, rather than having to wait a year and a half before you see the characters come to life. There were just these beautiful performances sort of evolving in front of me.
So in working with Jonathan, I mean, because it's not only it's based on a true story, and you're working with the son of the parents in the film, but this guy's your producing partner, he's your friend. I mean, did that sort of make you feel more responsibility, a little more pressure, or did that just sort of make you feel more comfortable?
You know, the amazing thing about Jonathan and Diana, his mother as well, who obviously is in the film, you know, and she's still around. She's a very, very close friend too. They were both very unprecious about it. They really trusted me to make the film in the way that, you know, that I saw fit. And what this film, and the way we chose to make this film, you know, we could have made a very dour, kind of miserable, dark documentary about the life of someone who became disabled, and it was a terrible tragedy. But that would have been a complete lie. That wouldn't have been the truth, because in actual fact, this couple, as you've just witnessed, and it's true, emotionally very truthful to how it was, were full of, had such a positive attitude. Once Robin had come out of his depression and they'd chosen to live outside of hospital, which was such a risk. I mean, to live 2 minutes away from death with the risk of that respirator breaking down fueled this intensity of life, you know, fueled a kind of, a way of living which was so, that they were so living in the moment that they were true pioneers of their time. And that's what really inspired me about the story, that these guys were the first of their kind, you know, the first of that no one with that disability had lived outside of hospital before. And it was such a huge risk. It was like saying, when she says in the movie, you know, how can I make life better for you? And he says, get me out of here. It's like saying, I want you to put me on the moon, or I want you to put me on top of Mount Everest. No one had done it before. And that sense of pioneering really spoke to me. And I mean, I also, Scott, you know, the other thing is I have a very personal connection to the subject matter in this movie. My mother used to teach disabled kids. And my dad was a doctor. He founded a hospital in Baghdad in Iraq. And my sister is wheelchair bound. She's a multiple sclerosis sufferer. So the subject matter was very, very, very close to my heart. And you know, I see my sister now in 2017. She's wheelchair bound, and how, you know, still difficult in this day and age it is, and attitudes towards disability in the workplace and just generally, and like I say, accessibility is so much better now. But imagine what life must have been like in 1960 when disabled people were kept out of sight and out of mind, and not treated at all as you know, part of healthy human society.
The scene with the plug,
yeah,
was like just everything you talked about, just being 2 minutes away from death.
Yeah,
that was his 2 minutes.
And all of the, I mean, that's true. All of the events in this movie are absolutely true. There's, you know, you often go and see a movie which says this is based on a true story, and people take huge liberties with that. But this film, and this is corroborated by all of the family members. They said when they watched it, and friends who knew Robin and Diana said, "This is how it was." This is exactly how it was. They remembered specific events. A lot of the dialogue was verbatim. The doctor really did say, "If you leave here, you'll die within 2 weeks." You know, Diana did say to Colin, you know, "We're not going to keep Robin alive for the sake of his friends," and it's very, very accurate. And I think for some people, that, you know, and the humour in it is again their response to this, the tragedy that befell them. But I think, you know, some of the criticism we've had of the movie has been, it couldn't possibly have been like that. These people must have been, you know, there must have been much more pain and you know, the fact of the matter is, this was the truth. This was absolutely the truth. They had this outlook on life. And the emotion in the film is so, you know, it's maybe a British thing too, you know, the very suppressed emotion. You know, you don't talk about your emotions. It's not doesn't sort of come to the surface. There's no scenes where they're kind of like, wow, you know, I'm having a terrible time. You know, it's just, that just wasn't the way these people existed. They existed with a sort of a wit and an exuberance and a sort of a really quite a sophisticated but witty outlook on life. You know, so they found everything funny.
Yeah, tell me about your first conversations with Andrew and Claire, and why they were just ideal for Robin and Diana.
Well, I mean, you know, Andrew Spider-Man is, you know, is who else are you going to cast as someone to suffer from polio? No, it's like the great energy that man has, and the brilliant. I mean, he's a very sensitive actor. He's a fantastically devoted, method actor who really gets into his role. I literally wanted to cast him because of his physicality, because he is so agile, because he is so athletic, and he's charismatic. And to take all that away from him, to rob him of all of that, and have him go through what it must be like to only be able to move from the chin up, was an extraordinary challenge for him. And he spent a lot of time researching the role and talking to everybody in the family and Diana, and and he even had a mold of Jonathan's teeth made so that he could speak more like Jonathan. I mean, he's incredibly devoted, and he learned to speak with a respirator. And the interesting thing, Robin Cavendish, the real Robin, was very smart. He hated people finishing his sentences, and because of the respirator, because you've got a certain amount of breath that goes into your lungs, you can only get halfway through a sentence before you're out of breath. So he always used to find this very clever way of changing the last word of a sentence so that nobody could finish his sentences for him. That was a sort of smart, kind of witty thing that Rob would do, and Andrew kind of just took all that in. He soaked it all up, and I mean, I just think he's played an incredible role in this.
Why this time to make these two films, so Jungle Book and then Breathe first? Like, what made you just go, after working on such vast films with such amazing filmmakers, also including Spielberg in there? Why was now like the time when, okay, I'm ready for this, I want to do this?
Well, I mean, I've been moving towards directing, as you know, for some time, and I adore acting. I love acting, but I also wanted to direct, and I was lucky enough when working on the Hobbit trilogy for when I was going back to reprise the role of Gollum. Peter Jackson asked me to be his second unit director, so I spent a huge chunk of time, 200 days shooting Peter Jackson's second unit, and learned a lot from him. And then, so I was ready to take on. I mean, that was filmmaking on a huge scale, and that was my first experience of directing. But it left me with this armory of kind of tools with which to start shooting something like Jungle Book, which again is a big movie. But what I love about this film is the attitude towards smiling in the face of catastrophe. And God, do we ever need films that are life-affirming? I mean, we live in tough times at the moment, and on a daily basis we are seeing catastrophe around the world. And to make a film which celebrates and is a tribute to people who are able to come back from something like that and smile with and have such a beautiful outlook on life, I think it's a film that's worth making for that reason alone.
Absolutely, the life affirming aspect of the film is endearing and inspiring.
Yeah.
In terms of editing, I mean, a lot of filmmakers say that that's really where you make your movie. So was there, in terms of you shot for 7 weeks, was there anything that you sort of have to let go for the sake? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, there was a lot of material to cover in this shoot. As you can imagine, you're also you're traveling through time. You've got actors who are aging. You've got they're geographically changing. We go from from Africa to England to Spain to Germany to all these places. We literally shot hard for 7 weeks. And then trying to give space for the actors to really. I mean, the chemistry between Andrew and Claire, I think, is phenomenal, and to really create an atmosphere where they could really feel like they were this couple that have known each other for that long and love each other in that way. I suppose what I'm getting to is that we only had a few takes really for each segment, for each beat, for each scene, and so there wasn't a whole swathe of material that hit the cutting room floor because there was no more material. I mean, there was very little extra stuff. There were a few scenes. For instance, in the opening, we decided to trim back and try and tell the love story, the romantic kind of love story of them falling. And it was in reality a whirlwind romance. They literally fell in love with each other on first sight, and within 6 weeks decided to marry each other. So all that's true. But we had we did shoot some extra scenes where the first time they go out and they first kiss in the car, and the first ball that they start dancing at, and all that. We trimmed all that right back, because actually where this film really starts is once Robin gets struck with polio and their response to that. So that was, I suppose, one area where that we did trim back on.
Wow. What were some of the lessons that you, over the years, and maybe going back to your theater background as well, that you learned from directors that you applied to Jungle Book and Breathe?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been fortunate enough to work with some brilliant directors, both in the theatre world, excuse me, and the film world. Christopher Nolan, Steven Spielberg, Peter Jackson. I mean, these are titans of the cinema, and Peter, obviously, I've worked with on many films, and he has inspired me perhaps the most. But Matt Reeves too. I think Peter Jackson I learnt a lot from, in terms of, every single. He used to say to me, every single beat, every single shot, when you're shooting it and you're reshooting it, you can make it better every single time. And every single shot has to tell a story. I mean, I remember seeing his film Heavenly Creatures back in the day, which maybe some of you saw. Amazing film, but what inspired me about that film was the way Peter treated performance, and the way that the camera supported the performance, the way a camera moves around the performance, dances with the performance. That I learned from him, and from Matt, from Matt Reeves, who shot his brilliant director who worked on all the last two Planet of the Apes movies, is very accurate in terms of point of view. The point of view, who you're watching this story through the eyes of. And the point of view shifts in this movie from Robbins to a shared point of view from Diana and Robin. And so that was another inspiration, was actually working with Matt.
I want to open up to the audience, because I know that especially if a lot of people move down to the front here and have some questions. And since you raised your hand first, you're the big winner.
How did Robin and Diana make ends meet financially, and how long did Germany take to turn around and introduce those chairs?
Yeah, good question. So Robin was a very, he was a tea broker before he was struck down with polio, but he was quite a shrewd businessman, and one of the things that he could do without using any of his body was use his business brain. And there's a small scene that depicts in this him trading with stocks and shares. So he was able, when Diana and he had a finite amount of money when they moved into that house. She'd bought the house, and their money was going to dribble away, so he had to find a way of making it work. And so he began to trade, and he got lucky, and he earned money on stocks and shares, and but which gradually, as you see in the movie, they put money into the house and sort of built the house up, and it allowed them to make those trips and so on and so forth. I mean, not huge amounts of money, but money that they were sort of reasonably comfortably well off. And in terms of Germany, that was they made several trips to Europe. And we encapsulated that into one trip for the purposes of the movie. But it was very much that hospital they go and visit. I mean, that machinery is absolutely fact. That those multiple iron lung chambers were for real. And I can show you pictures. I've got them on my iPhone of this. The point that they were making was, yes, it was highly evolved technology, but these people were having no lives. They were in a waiting room for death, basically, and that's what shocked Robin, and that's what he took into the conference when he went to talk to the disabled conference. And if you can imagine what that must have been like in those days, it would to actually go on stage must have been like John Merrick, the Elephant Man, walking out on stage and appearing to a crowd of people. It's just like they were astonished, because nobody had seen someone in his position before that was able to to be alive outside of hospital. It was kind of just an unimaginable thing. So so that did have a huge impact. I mean, over time, and we encapsulate it slightly into it makes it feel like it's just one event. But they went to a number of conferences and managed to change public opinion and get more funding for their chairs.
Because you're in the front row.
At the end there, when the doctor came and he passed away, I wasn't sure exactly what he did because he was still alive. So I thought he was going there to pull the plug, but it didn't seem like he pulled the plug.
He didn't go to pull the plug. He went to administer a drug that would see Robin off in a way that gradually helps him fade away, basically.
You know what? Let me go right there. Yeah, you.
Hi. First of all, I just wanted to thank you for such a beautiful film. I think last year we got a movie called Me Before You that came out that had one perspective on, ending a little bit earlier in life, to choose to do that, because I can't imagine living like that, and I haven't had that experience. But to see such vitality in the love between the two, and knowing that Robin was worthy of receiving that love in whatever condition, and that he was just as lovable as he was before, and they're just fire for each other, was so moving. I was very genuinely moved the entire time, and I was very proud of you for making it, and I just want to thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
You have a question?
Yes, I do.
Great.
First of all, sir, really, really, really a big fan since Prestige and Planet of the Apes. Lobbied as many people as possible that Caesar should have had an Oscar nomination. And a Marvel.
Wait, hang on.
Yep.
Caesar will get an Oscar.
Caesar will get an Oscar. Absolutely. And a Marvel fan too. So everything, but there's a point to what I was trying to say with that. You seem to pick really amazing projects, really, really cool projects, and to direct a film like this, like that was, I agree with you completely. I was moved the entire film. My wife and I were crying the whole time. What do you? It may sound like a very general question, but what is it that you really look for in a project? Whether it's directing or acting or motion capture, what is it that really, really makes you like excited about a project?
It's a great question, and the answer is there has to be something about a project that you choose, because you're going to live with a project for a long period of time. If you're directing, certainly, or if you're acting, you're going to have to invest deeply. It's always got to affect you emotionally. Whatever project I choose, there's an emotional connection to it. Whether it's playing Gollum or Caesar or Kong or any of these characters that may seem like fantasy creatures, but there's something profound that says something about the human condition that is relatable to, and that I think I can help change the perception of in some way, or help the audience, or ask questions of an audience to judge this character in a different way to how they might think they might judge it. So for me, it's always about an emotional connection, first and foremost, and a personal connection. And I'm not alone in this. Everybody, I think, who gets involved in movie making really, it's got to come from something that drives you and that you're passionate about, and that touches you in some way, because you're going to put yourself on the line with it every single time, and that's only worth doing if it's something you really believe in.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you discuss with Jonathan Robbins' end-of-life decision?
Did I discuss with Jonathan?
Yes. Did you ever discuss his opinion of what his father did?
I knew Jonathan's opinion about his father ending his life. Robin and Diana were fully accepting of it because they were fully accepting of him choosing to live, and so. We're terrible in the West. Our attitude towards death is we're very fearful of it. It's a huge taboo, and we manage it quite miserably, really. And if you look at the options, if you have a choice between Robin, if you look at Robin's choices to maybe die, choking on his own blood, giving his wife making his wife very, very miserable, deeply upsetting his son. Him being taken away in a very grotesque and awful way, or being able to have a party, say goodbye to his friends, have a great and fond farewell with all the people that he loves, and to sit and gradually drift away. there's no choice as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I know which way I'd like to go, and so this obviously this will be divisive, and it is a controversial subject, and many people will believe their own things, and everybody's entitled to their own belief. But I know for a fact that Jonathan and Diana, couldn't have had it better, and they both describe it as one of the most beautiful things that has ever happened to them in their lives.
Right there, yes.
I also want to echo what's been said, and thank you for bringing this production to us. I am a polio survivor.
Wow.
I'm also on the Polio Health International Board of Directors. And my guess is there are a number of people in this audience who are also polio survivors. So because the disease in the mid-50s, the vaccine from Salk and Sabin, pretty much in the U.S. has taken out that as a focus of a disease that was an epidemic portion. I think most of the community, the non-survivors, sort of have put polio aside. So this film brings it out because there are something like 400,000 Americans suffering from polio or polio survivors. And what I also hope this film does is, in addition to bringing the recognition of polio after sort of disappearing for so many years, the knowledge that post-polio syndrome is a significant, for those of us who are survivors, post-polio syndrome is the impact that 30, 40, 50 years later continues to have a impact on our physical lives and emotional as well.
Do you have a question?
And so, right. And it's a statement in terms of, it's more a statement in terms of thanking you, because there's really limited research out there because it's considered to be no longer an issue. And yet in reality, post-polio syndrome is a significant issue for almost 500,000 Americans that are still battling. And our membership continues to drop considerably simply because we are dying off, right? And so I don't really have a question. It's more a thank you and a recognition of what you are bringing to the fore that I think most are not aware of.
Thank you very much.
Let's go. One more question. Who's got it? You. Yes.
Thank you very much for this movie. This really captured my attention. And I'm a moviegoer, and sometimes I make myself go to sleep because I'm just so bored to death. That just really resonated with me. People really don't talk about these things, but I'm just really curious because I'm a mother, and I'm always concerned about my son. What is Jonathan doing now?
Well, Jonathan is a very successful film producer and produced this movie, and he produced this movie and many others, and is my business partner and very good friend and the founder of this company that we have. So yeah, I mean he is filled with his father's kind of energy and exuberance and lust for life, and he grew up. He says, Jonathan says, it was the happiest childhood, and he was so inspired by his dad. And he said, he had a captive audience. His dad couldn't go anywhere, so he had his dad with him all the time. When do we ever get our dads to be around us all the time? So he was truly kind of thankful in a way. So I mean, I think. Jonathan is wanted to make this film as not just a tribute to them, but as I say, and for the same reason I wanted to make this movie, as a thank you and a tribute and a sort of honouring people who are able to, if a hurricane has just smashed your house down and you have to carry on, if you can carry on and your life, you manage to smile in the face of that in some way and overcome that and live a fulfilled life, that's amazing, and it's we live, as I say, we live in times where people are suffering in so many different ways, and we all know people who are elderly and suffering, or we know someone who's terminally dying of something, or this film, which again why we wanted to make it was because it's an ultimately very relatable film. There are 43 million carers in the United States. 43 million caregivers, who, like Diana, have given so much love and devotion, and not out of duty, but true love to and true love is what this film is all about.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, and make sure you spread the word about Breathe. Go on social media, go on Facebook, go on Twitter, go on Instagram. I don't know if you're still using MySpace. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andy Serkis.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.